Hello, everybody. This is Love from Above with your Sibling Spirit Guides. I'm Maureen, and this is my brother.
Hi, everyone. This is Brian.
Yeah, and on this podcast, we share channelings we receive from Ascended Masters, star beings, and occasionally our ancestors. And today's topic we touched upon in our last session, but we really wanted to dig into it much further today because this is so important. The true purpose of life. So, Brian, you want to kick off this very important topic?
Pretty deep, huh? Yeah. Um, well, okay, so this comes back from a channeling that was from February from the Watchers, and they said, "We come forward to remind you of the true purpose of humanity, which is to serve in the evolutionary line of progress. And the goal of all life forms is to achieve a higher vibration." It says the lighter the soul, the easier is to travel, to feel free, to feel the lightness and the joy and every present moment. So, what are your thoughts on that, Maureen?
You know what it reminds me of? Brian, for those of you who are listening, we read it took us about more than a year, but we read almost all of Dolores Cannon's book. What a wonder she is. But I remember her saying that if we were in the same room as someone like from the 1800s, we would seem like we were radiant with light. So you can see that as we progress as a human species, that we become lighter and lighter and lighter, like literally, literally. Um, so yeah, that's what it reminds me of. It's definitely in line with the teachings that she recorded in her books. Do you remember that?
Right. Yes, I do. Um, yeah, and it's the easier to travel. I was going to ask you since that's aligns with you're the traveler. So,
Well, I don't think they mean literally to
I know.
travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I do think that that is one of, I have a birthday coming up, Brian. I'm sure you haven't forgotten, um, but one of the things I love about aging is that it is easier to travel for me, at least the older that I get, just because I become more adept with life. Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so then let me they go on to say this is achieved rather simply, and that your books and texts make it seem a difficult and lengthy process, but in actuality, it can occur in a single moment, a single breath. It is the awakening to the true essence of reality.
You know who awakened in a single breath was Byron Katie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't remember, I mean, the details of it, but it was literally in a single breath, a single moment. She, all the thoughts in her head disappeared. And that happens to other people. Like there's other spiritual teachers who talk about that. But then often like a couple months later, the thoughts come back. But she had this significant event. I don't remember what it was, but and ever since then, like she's just been fully present in every moment. And and loving and appreciate every moment. One of my favorite memories is Oprah was interviewing her and she was like, "Okay, really? Like you do you have a mother? What happened when your mother died?" And Byron was like, "It was the most beautiful moment. I was so happy to take care of her for the last 8 months of her life. What a joy." I mean, it was just like she literally is in every present moment and relishing it and cherishing it and not worrying about the future or agonizing about the past. And what a treasure she is, you know? What a treasure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I'm not there yet. That's it's hard, but I definitely appreciate that. And it's, that's like a lot of things, a lot of message we get. It's actually this simpler. It's the same with like I
Yeah.
think when it came to equations, it's like these advanced math formulas they're trying to give us. They're saying how simple it is. And same with if you recall, they talked about how within a drop of water, there's the power to power all sorts of energy that we haven't figured out. And so it's very simple, but it's beyond most people's grasp. So that's a common theme that we hear from them.
Well, I
So
know you read that book from that Japanese woman, and I know you're in the process of simplifying your life, and that does make it lighter and easier. Remind me of what that title of that book was, and
I know it's Marie Kondo. I think that's a Kondo, but it's yeah, it's what is the phrase of that? But yeah, you let things go that don't spark joy. That was it. If it no longer sparks joy, and I think I was relaying this to you. I used to feel how like, oh, someone got me this shirt and I've never worn it, but I feel guilty. And I'm like, I just keep it around and then eventually get rid of it. And I'm like, no, if it doesn't spark joy, just set it free. Thank it for its time. You know, and that totally, yeah, we're in the process now of like sort of purging. And I love doing that every once in a while. I think it's easy to acquire a lot of stuff you don't need. So we're in the process of doing that. And in the summer, we'll be doing that to try and lighten our aspect of our life in that regard. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
so I have a question for you. So they're talking about the true purpose of humanity, which is to serve an evolutionary line of progress. And I'm sure you remember for the listeners, like, I don't think I've ever talked about this, but one of the most significant mystical events that I have ever experienced was occurred in the Sahara Desert in 2014 when I started to travel the world nomadically. And I had, I won't even go into it, but I had this event that was very difficult. I could never forget. And the main purpose of that event was they told me my individual life purpose, which was to live the law of one and to live it, to teach it, to breathe it, to be example of it. So what do you think that this is like semantics? Because the true purpose of humanity, and then we all have like our individual purpose, because I mean, it was very significant that that is this purpose for me in this lifetime. And Brian and I had an aunt who was just so dear to both of us. And I know that before she passed, she told me that she had cerebral palsy and she had just many, many physical ailments and difficulties. And she said that she just knew ever since that she was a child that the purpose of her lifetime, her last lifetime, was to overcome physical pain. And that was why she was on this planet. So how do you differentiate like those experiences with this whole purpose of to become lighter and achieve a higher vibration?
Yeah, well, that sort of leads to the next topic because I was just gonna say that it aligns with what they're telling us, um, where it said it says you and your brother move forward with a host of angelic support to raise the vibration of this nation we fostered so long ago. So, it seems like, yeah, they that our purpose is to, raising the vibration is through this podcast and through just our, meditations and whatever we're doing to help raise the whole vibration of the nation, the earth, of everything. So, I thought that was really interesting because it doesn't seem like you're in your own little world that you're having an impact on others, but I guess we definitely do.
Yeah, and the one phrase that I like about that is um I don't know if many people know that Saint Germain was involved with our founding fathers and that um there were ascended masters who came forward to help form the United States. The vision with George Washington was apparently a major mystical event, and George Washington and um, Ben Franklin, and do you remember who else? They were definitely involved with. So it's interesting. I love all those stories about the real history of our planet, the real history of our nation. Do you remember those stories, Brian?
Yeah, so we could also do a whole episode of that. They've come, and that's what they mention in this quote about how the nation we fostered so long ago, because they talk about all their, past instances of, different famous political figures and their interactions with them over time. And as we mentioned before, a lot of them were not that receptive, but I think definitely the founding father, they did t talk about, George Washington, what a great man he was, and his, he followed their guidance and things like that. But the other thing I do recall, and I don't remember, this might have been from a book, but it was, I think there was like a key point when they were doing the forming the nation, and there's at an impasse, and it was not looking good. Like if it was just this impasse, and someone came out that no one knew who it was, but was in the
Right.
room and like resolved the issue. And then before, and then they moved forward, and then they were looking for this individual, and he was gone. It was just, and they said it was, an ascended master that had come in to help in this situation, and then disappeared. But so it is very interesting, um, to know, like, that their history in the forming of this nation, and in they've talked about other nations too, like Napoleon, and all sorts of historical leaders.
Yeah. I mean, I think that probably the United States was after, they tried to prevent what happened in France. And so, with the French Revolution. So I think that this was, about the same time period. So it is really, really interesting. And I remember that same story. There was a speaker, I think it was a speaker who made this eloquent speech and moved everybody to come to resolution with this difficult topic. And then the speaker disappeared.
Yeah, right. It's amazing.
So, but we all can experience that too. Like I was telling Brian before we got on this call, like today was a day where just everything was in alignment, everything just came into everything just worked together, and one of the main messages that I got last year in my dreams was, the more you control, the less you receive. So I'm just controlling less and just allowing these invisible hands to come in and usher everything and bring it all together in in a much more beautiful way than I could ever do by myself.
Yeah, that's a great message. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing I thought that was interesting, it says we're present now in both your domiciles, which are connected through a series of energetic cords that run through the planet. In this way, your bonds can be strengthened. Did you realize we've got these connections, Maureen? You're in South Africa. I'm currently in Chicago. Um, so yeah, it's a
Well, I mean, this is all just an illusion, and and this is one of the things I'm really grateful for this. I mean, Brian and I have been very close, but when Toth came forward and gave us this task, I mean, I'm really, really grateful because I mean, I can definitely feel those bonds are very, very strong. And I'm just really, really grateful to be able to share this spiritual path with you, you know?
Yeah, same here, same here. And then the other thing, so this was from the Watchers. I was going to ask you about this. They said, "We shall serve you tea and coffee and regale you with our wondrous feats of the past. For now, um, know that we are indeed present and eagerly await your call for assistance. We are the Watchers." So I, I this that is funny that they're going to serve us tea and coffee and talk about their feats of the past. And then we do have our daily prayers and things we call on, our grandparents and others. Um, but I was going to ask you this is, do you ever call on the Watchers? Because I really haven't in the past.
You know, I do include them in my gratitude practice. So I have a gratitude practice, which I do every day, and I usually include them and Toth and Aura. But I should. Thank you for this reminder. I should call on them. And the whole thing with tea and coffee, like this comes through. I don't know. Sometimes we'll have to figure out if we can actually upload some of the channeling that comes through because um it's very different from the way I speak. And sometimes there was another one recently where you know, how they communicate. And it depends on who is communicating too. There's a different way in which these different groups communicate with us. But that is that is funny because neither one of us drink tea or coffee.
I know. Well, I do actually drink tea, and this is a preview of maybe next week's uh podcast because yeah, I used to drink coffee, but I don't. Can I, based on guidance from those above, that I shouldn't be drinking coffee. So I did think that was sort of interesting. But yeah, that's for next week. We'll talk about dreams and other things around that have other messages like that have come up. Do you want to
Yeah,
talk about the last topic? Or go ahead.
sure. So the last topic is actually kind of contradiction. It kind of uh, is what we talked about in last week's session too, in that your ascension process requires effort. So in last week's session, we were given a beautiful analogy about how your ascension process is like a shell that's on the sand, and it requires you to actually pick it up and blow in it. And the harder you blow in it, the more sound is produced. And the same is true with your ascension process. It requires an action on your part. Um, and it says the ascension process is not something to be devoted in the hours of meditation. It is a singular purpose of the human life form. You know, which was interesting. I was recently visiting a friend of mine, and she was so dear. She wanted me to meet a bunch of her friends, and one of the friends I met, he asked me, "So what's your spiritual practice?" And I mean, I could have gone into the myriad of things I do every day, but I just said, my life is a living prayer. I mean, because that's really what that's really where I am, where I'm focused on each moment and aware and connected in each moment. That's the goal. So the whole day, the whole night, and when you do lucid dreaming, it's not only during the day, it's also at night. So it's literally, the whole living process is a living prayer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Um, yeah, and that's not easy, but I do like that they said it's not just when you're meditating, it's like that Byron Katie um example. So And then the other thing you had is a beautiful quote. It said, each moment present is like a pearl on the path to ascension.
Yeah,
So
I wrote that down and I put it in my notes, and I don't know who gave it that message or when it came in, but I just really like that visual because I am focused on staying in the present moment and just to imagine like a set of pearls, and that each moment that I'm able to just stay in this present moment is like I'm creating this beautiful path, this beautiful luminous path to ascension. So yeah, we're so lucky. I'm about to have a big birthday, and heads up to our my dear friend Gina, who's going to do my astrology report. And last year, this was in my astrology report, and boy, I never would have imagined someone when she told me that a special angel was coming through, and that I would also be responsible for communicating in a new way with the public. So yeah, Gina, I'm looking forward to next our session. Who knows what's going to happen for my next year birthday year? Brian, what do you think about that?
who knows? Yeah. I mean, this is life is full of surprises, so we never really know what's going to happen next. Um, yeah, so it's be interesting to see where we are in a year from now, but I'm sure it's going to be beautiful, and there's going to be all sorts of interesting highlights to share. But all right.
Well,
Well,
I can't say what's going to happen next week because we've already prepared the podcast for next week. So I guess let me just lead into that. And when we look for the information with the podcast, we try and find information that's been repeated again and again and again. And we've gotten so much information with regards to how important sleep and proper nutrition is. So it's not something you necessarily think about because sleep and we need, food to survive, but these are some important guidelines that are helping us, and hopefully it will help you as well.
yeah, great message. Well, as always, uh, you can reach us at lovefromabovepodcast@gmail.com, and look forward to speaking with you next week.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Love to everyone.